Hey everybody, welcome back to Stadiacast. I'm Bill. That's not Lloyd, that's a black square. I gotta click on the pop-out button and then Lloyd shall appear. There he is. Technical difficulties because I don't know what I'm doing apparently. How's it going, everybody? Lloyd, what's going on?
I was in a very dark place for a while, Bill, but I'm back now, so it's all good.
Absolutely. Boy, that kind of threw everything off. We'll just get started on the show. This is Stadiacast on Sundays, 10 a.m. U.S. Eastern, right here at youtube.com/nerdnest. We record our show, so make sure you come by, click on all the bells, click on all the buttons for YouTube. It absolutely helps. Make sure you click that like button. Let's go ahead and get started with what have we been playing. I'm actually going to start us off this time because I've screwed things up, and I want to talk a little bit about about Baldur's Gate 3, which just got an update. The update is, well, first off, they added a new class, which is awesome. Did you ever pick up Baldur's Gate 3, Lloyd?
Oh, it was muted. Yeah. We played it at launch, and I haven't tried any of the new content drops because having my save game removed to try this new stuff is always kind of a slap. So I'm going to wait till 1.0 comes out and it's fully released and everything is good, and then I'm going to play through the whole game that way.
Okay, well, Lloyd, you're going to be waiting a long time. We'll talk about that in a sec too.
That's what I hear. Yeah.
Well, actually, we'll talk about it now. Larian Games basically has said, hey, Baldur's Gate 3 will not be finished this year. You look forward to it coming out next year for the 1.0 for when it's complete, and then Lloyd will actually be able to play Baldur's Gate 3 again. I keep dipping in and I play, I don't know, like 5 hours or so whenever new content comes out just to see how things are progressing. But because, you know, exactly what Lloyd said, where it's a little painful to have your save file deleted, I do understand that, and that's why I don't invest too much time into it. But I jumped in again to play the Barbarian a little bit, and I have to say, very fun. I like the rage mechanic. I like the improvised weapons that you can like, for example, like grab a chair and use it as a melee weapon, which is very cool. So like that kind of stuff is cool. And then they also updated the UI, and the UI, I played it. I've forced myself to only use a controller this time around, and I feel like it's almost there. It's still not as good as the UI when I was playing Divinity Original Sin or Divinity Original Sin 2. Like, their controller design is infinitely better, and I still do not understand. Like, it's the same company. I still don't understand why Larian doesn't just say, hey, let's just do exactly what we did before because it's better. It is better to play with mouse and keyboard, but I want to sit back on the couch and relax and play. And It's definitely better now than it was before. The UI is improving, but it's still not as good as it was in the previous games. But boy, another entire year before the game comes out, that's kind of painful. And I was really like hoping that we would be like, because I'm with Lloyd, I don't want to invest too much time if they're going to delete my save. I really want to play this game some more.
Yeah, it's one of those things where I hope an update comes out soon where they say your save games are safe. We're not going to touch your save games. We may add other characters, but your save game is completely safe. Because then I'll jump in. I don't care if there's other content coming. I want to play the game now. Like it's been in our libraries for a year and a half, something.
It's been a while.
It's been a while, and to have to wait another year to play the game makes me wonder if early access is really at home on Stadia. You'd think like PC is used to early access. Steam people have been doing early access for a while, and there's early access on consoles, of course, and we do treat Stadia as kind of a console more than a PC. I don't know if early access is a good fit for a service when you're paying full price for a game that you really don't get to fully play for 2 years. Of course, buyer beware. Let's give people options to make their own decisions. I get all that stuff, but 2 years or a year and a half or whatever the final date is till when this is finished being patched seems like a really long time for a console. But again, everybody's different, and they might not see that. They might love the fact that they're seeing the game develop before their eyes. They're able to give feedback. They're able to kind of change the course of where the game is going by submitting feedback. So I really dig that at that. I dig that part of the early access, but it's the whole not able to play your game and finish it for multiple years is just kind of rough.
Yeah, and then on top of that, okay, so the thing is on PC, you have the option to not update your game. You can say, well, I'm not going to update my game right now. I'm going to keep playing the character that I've
Right.
been playing.
Yeah.
And then for them to say, well, on Stadia, you don't make that decision. Your game gets updated no matter what. So that's why that's personally, that's why it's a little more painful for me on Stadia, because there are no updates. So you don't get to make that decision to stick
Yeah.
with your old playthrough until you get to a point where you're like, all right, I'm ready to start the new stuff and then download the next patch. Of course,
Yeah.
for me, that wouldn't really be an issue because I just tell Steam to auto update everything that I have anyway so that I don't have to think about it, which is like that's how I do it. So I would still run into this issue, but I know that there's people out there who would say, I'm going to hold off. I'm going to keep playing my Ranger, and then when I finish the Ranger, I'll come back and play the Necromancer or something. And like
Right.
that kind of thing I think would improve it, but that's not an option on Stadia. And I don't think it's not anything that could be done about that. It's not like they can keep around old instances of the game on Stadia servers just in case Lloyd or
Yeah.
Bill happen to want to play on their Thief that they started with.
Yeah, Granite T Rock in the chat is saying, would the proposed Stadia experimental channels let people pick when to update? And possibly, Granite, but I don't think so. What those channels are is if you've ever participated in like a test flight beta on iOS, you download the test flight app, you enroll in a beta for the new Xbox app or the new blah, blah, blah. And you'll get push notifications every once in a while that a new test version is available. You hit the push notification, you install that version of the app, you test the app, and the developers get more details of what you did while you're using it. And that's kind of how the channels are going to work. Is a developer can sign Bill and I up for a beta of Game X, and then we get access to Game X for a period of time to do testing. There may be frequent updates, or maybe whatever, depending on what the developer wants to do. But that's a little bit of a different thing than keeping multiple versions up, because like Bill said, on Steam, you just don't let it auto update, and you don't ever have to worry about the game blowing away your save game without you saying, okay, I'm ready for my save game to die, let's update the game and then restart it.
Mm-hmm. And then, Jem in chat says early access is fine, but charging full price is the issue. Um, I boy, I think I do agree with that on one hand,
Yeah.
because you're beta testing their game for them essentially, and they're getting a lot of value out of you as a beta tester. And it also, like, if they would say, hey, the game is $40 right now while it's in early access, but when it comes out it's going to be 60. Of course, I will say this: we don't know that it is full price right now, Jim. Maybe it's going to cost $70 or $80 when the
Sure.
game actually releases. There's no way for us to know that.
Yeah, yeah, that's one of the things. Like I've bought a lot of early access games on Steam, but they're always cheaper than the full retail. So you get a little bit of a discount, you help with the development, and you may lose your save game, or the game may not be playable for a stretch of time, and that's kind of the contract that you sign. But most developers get around that by charging you a little bit less while the game is in development. So yeah, it's different. I'm not here complaining about Baldur's Gate or the way that they chose. It's just sad that I want to play this game so much, but I really don't want to lose my save, because if I can't finish the game, as we've talked about for weeks here, I'm going back to a bunch of old games and finishing them off. If I can't do that with a game like Baldur's Gate, I'm less likely to pick it up, even if I only get a few hours in, because that's just wasted effort for me.
Yeah, and of course there are advantages to early access, and they, like
100%.
Larian Studios did this huge blog post forever ago explaining all the reasons why early access really helped them out with Divinity Original Sin 2, which is a fantastic game. I bought that game after it came out, And I'm really glad that they did all of that early access stuff. So
Yep.
I'm imagining that in 2023, when Baldur's Gate 3 finally comes out and people buy it and they play it, they're going to be like, this game's fantastic. And I expect a very nice note from each and every one of you for playing it when it was in early access. Lloyd,
Right.
not in early access, but you've been playing some other games. What games have you
Yeah.
been playing this week, man? Or
Going
these
going
2
back
weeks?
through going back through my list of games that I want to complete or ones that I just want to jump in. I did pick up and try Fast and Furious Rise of Shifter again. We talked about that last episode, so 2 weeks ago, and it was pretty much unplayable. I went back in just to show, mainly just to show my son how bad it was, the lag, and there was no lag, and I'm like, okay, I'm lying to my kids. There's no pauses, there's no pausing, there's no fast forwarding thing that was happening when I did my initial playthrough. So I don't know if it was a Stadia issue at launch. I did start the game multiple times and had that same problem, so I'm not sure if that's the case, or if outright games went out and put up a patch for the game. Whatever happened, not sure. The game was fully playable, so played through that with my kids from start to finish, and it was fun. I mean, it's not a good racing game, which is sad. I expected a lot more. I wanted more Mario Kart. The only part of Mario Kart in this game is if you get hit when you're in first with one of the attacks, there's a good chance on the last lap you will finish last if you get hit at any point on that lap. Even if you're playing on easy, it doesn't matter the difficulty because the AI is just not good. So, but anyway, Fast and Furious Rise of Shifter. Hopefully, they can get some more patching out there. A funny thing, there are trophies for online play. You don't actually have to play online. You just need to start an online lobby and then stop looking immediately, and it fills with bots, and then you can do all your online trophies by racing against the computer. So, yeah,
Lloyd's getting them achievements.
it's one of those games. So yeah, Jeff Carrier says Chris from Google confirmed when they fixed it. So it was a Google problem. It was a game problem, not a service problem. So that's interesting. So anyway, Fast and Furious Rise of Shifter is out. Hopefully, a kart racer that is better in some instances or some ways comes out in the future, because we're still waiting for a really good kart racer. I did play Nanotale. That was one of our free pro games in February, and that is the spiritual successor to Typing Chronicles. Epistory is what the other one was, which I really enjoyed. This one is different. When you play Nanotale with mouse and keyboard, instead of doing the weird IJEF thing to control your character, they just move the WASD characters over once to the right. So it's ESDF instead of WASD. So you can control the game just by moving your ring or your middle finger up and down to do to shift from the D to the E, which is perfect. Played through the entire game, loved it. It is a completely different type of game than the first one. This is more of an action RPG. If you play with controller, in fact, you're moving the reticule, the targeting reticule with the right stick, and then you're just hitting the right trigger to fire your spells at enemies. So you can play through it without the keyboard 100%, and it plays like a minorly janky action RPG game with like kind of dual stick shooting mechanics. Really fun game. The story is fantastic. I love the story in Epistory. I think I like the story in Nanotale even better. It's such a fantastic game, and definitely worth checking out. Even if you don't want to play it on a keyboard and type things out, it's enough of a game using the analog or the controller with your analog stick to kind of move the mouse cursor and things on the screen.
Awesome. And then you've also been, excuse me, playing Saints Row 4.
Yeah, dipped into that one again. I always have a game going that has a collectathon. Usually it's an Assassin's Creed game where I just want to mark things off a map when I have 15, 20 minutes I need to clear my head. I've been using Saints Row 4 for that. Such a good game. I've beat it on, I think, PlayStation 3, PlayStation 4. I've beat it on multiple consoles, maybe Switch even. I really love the game. I love the superpowers in the like Saints Row 3 and 4 that you get. Saints Row 4 is a lot of fun, and yeah, that's kind of my let's tick things off a list and slowly make our way through a game that I've beaten multiple times, just to use for time passing when I need to waste 15 minutes here and there.
All right. Well, that's awesome. And let's move on to other games where you might want to tick things off a list. And that would be Cyberpunk got a big update this
Yeah,
this week, or was it last week? I don't know. It
this week,
recently.
Tuesday, I think.
Okay.
Tuesday was the
All right.
patch.
So they got a big update on Tuesday, and we got the same. We got the Stadia version was patched same day with the other platforms, which is fantastic. You know, right before we started recording, Lloyd and I were talking about how it's frustrating when you get a game that is on Stadia gets patched on different days than on the other platforms, or sometimes different months when you're looking at games like Outrider. Baldur's Gate 3 has gone through those issues where the Stadia patches are usually like, I don't know, like a week behind or something. But as you can't
Yeah.
play cross play with that on Baldur's Gate 3, it doesn't really matter anyway. But Cyberpunk was updated, and Lloyd, you played a lot more Cyberpunk than I did, and I know neither of us jumped back in for any length of time since the patch, but you played it a little bit, right?
Yeah. I played a little bit just to see, because people were talking about how amazing the graphics look on Stadia, and it's definitely running on next gen hardware. And I dipped in, checked it out, and I don't think it's running on next gen hardware. And I'm sure we would have heard from Stadia, even though they said we're not going to announce anything anymore. If they've rolled out next gen hardware,
Yeah.
I would assume that they would let us know that. So I played it, and things look better. It's performing a lot more stably. So since this game uses a dynamic resolution, the game might look better for you just because it's running natively at a higher resolution and then being upscaled. Would be what my thoughts are for why it looks better. Lighting does look better. I it definitely. Obviously, I'm not the developer, so I can't say with certainty that it is not using ray tracing, hardware-based ray tracing, because it does not appear to be hardware-based ray tracing. But they've changed some of the way that the reflections and things work, so it does look prettier, even though it's not running on the same sort of hardware as like your Xbox Series or your PlayStation 5, where they can utilize hardware-based tricks to get things looking nicer. It's a fantastic patch. It fixes a lot of issues for a lot of people. One of my buddies was playing it on Xbox, I think. I think he was playing it on Xbox, and he ran into a bunch of bugs where he basically couldn't complete any missions because things were not there, or driving there would screw up. Like, there was just a weird bug that he was having, and he reported after this patch that he was able to get in and play more of the game. I never ran into those game breaking bugs, which is good. So I didn't really have anything to look into other than the fact that they've changed a lot in the game. You get all your skill points back. They've changed the way skills work. They've changed gunplay a little bit. They've changed your weapons by adding different weapons and different ways to attack. So this is a really good patch. It's weird that it took so long to come out, but that game was in a really terrible state at launch. So it's understandable that they had to put in a lot of work, burn a lot of midnight oil to get this game working properly on last gen consoles, but also the new current gen PlayStation 5 and Xbox Series with the added bells and whistles.
You know, I've seen a lot of people tweeting about Cyberpunk this week, and a lot of people were saying things like, if it was released this year, it would have been like a game of the year contender. And I'm not going to argue with them because I have not played that much of it. But what I will say is that this feels like it's possible that this could be another No Man's Sky. I mean, if you look at the way that No Man's Sky launched, it
Mm,
was like they they hyped it to crazy levels. It launched, everybody was disappointed, and now it's kind of turned into a darling. Like, everybody is always saying how great things about No Man's Sky, which I still haven't played. I know you're a huge fan of No Man's Sky, right, Lloyd? Am I remembering
yeah,
right?
yeah, I love that game.
Yeah, and I think that Cyberpunk 2077 might end up as one of those things in the future if the development team keeps doing what they're doing. And it just goes to show you that that quote from Miyamoto is that, well, I actually might be wrong. He says a delayed game can be good, but a rushed game is forever bad. Well, in this case, most of the time he's right, but in this case, it looks like maybe they're patching it to make it better. Um, in response to how the game runs compared to other platforms, I'm going to say the same thing that I've said 1,000 times on this show. If
Yeah.
I'm sitting there and I'm playing it on an Xbox Series X or a beefy PC with like a 3080 whatever graphics card or whatever. And then on this one, I'm playing on Stadia, and I look at this one running on either a $2,500 PC or a $500 console, and it looks better than the free Stadia version. Um, I'm not that surprised. Like that's not a big deal for me. Um, and the reality though is that I'm never going to do that. Like, who is going to do that other than people like Digital Foundry, where their job is to make intense pixel peeping comparisons like that? That's what they do. But most people just boot up a game and play it. And unless you're looking at them side by side, those differences aren't, yes, they're obvious when you look at it side by side, but when you're just playing the game, all of that stuff fades away, and it's
Mhm.
just the game. And the fact that people can't understand that is just crazy to me. And
Yeah.
the fact that people can't understand that you didn't have to buy a thing in order to play the Stadia version other than the game. That again does, like, that blows me away that people don't understand that.
Yeah, I had an interaction online about I don't know if it was about Cyberpunk. It was about a game where I mean, it was Outriders. I can't remember which game it was, but I remember the interaction because it just made me shake my head so hard. And they're like, "Yeah, the Stadia Key version looks like trash." And I'm like, "Well, what do you mean?" And then they sent me a screenshot, which was side by side, the Xbox Series version and then the Stadia version. And I'm like, "Okay." And he's like, "Look how much better all the plants that are around the world look." Sure, they look better. Are you looking at plants when you play the game, or are you in firefights? Do you care what's in your periphery? Well, I want my game to look the best. And I was like, well, if you really want your plants to look really good, have I got a game for you? It's called Farming Simulator, and it's available on Stadia. And then I didn't get another reply from it. So yeah, people are really crazy about that. Like, this game looks so much better on this other platform based on this screenshot. Okay, well then play on that platform. You don't have to convince me that it looks better because it's a different platform. But if you're playing a game and you're spending all the time looking at the ground because you want to see what your ground clutter textures look like, or if the plants deform when you walk through them, well, then you're not playing the same video game that we're playing.
That's true. Although I will say, like, back in the day, playing Metroid Prime on the GameCube, it started on the GameCube, right?
Metroid Prime, yes.
Yeah, playing that on the GameCube, and the first time when you went into an area and you saw like her visor fog up and you could see her reflection in her visor, like, that was a really cool moment, and it was amazing to me. But then I forgot about it. Like,
Uh,
clearly I didn't forget about it because I'm still talking about it. But like, that, those graphical things, they do pop, and you
they
do
do.
remember those. But the moment to moment gameplay, in my opinion, is what's more important.
But complaining that this fern in the distance looks less clean on the Stadia than it does on my Xbox, it's like, well, it's stuff that's in the periphery. It's not the main part of the game. That's the first thing that gets dialed down. I get it. Odo in the chat room saying, "Come on, in that case, we'd all be on PS2s or 360s." People care about graphics. They care about graphics. But do you really care that your fern has 3 extra pixels of resolution because it's using a higher texture model? No, because that stuff isn't the main part of the game. But when the character models look weird, sure, that's something to complain about. I don't really care about the periphery stuff in my video games. And again, it's all things that you wouldn't notice is better unless you had the other game running beside you anyway. But if you had the other game running beside you anyway and it looks better, well, just play on that platform then. You
Yeah.
clearly have both of them. Just play that one. So yeah, it drives me crazy that people pick out kind of like weird texture issues, or this fern model isn't as good in this first person shooter on this platform. Who cares? Who cares? It doesn't matter at the end of the day. At least that's my thought. If I'm having fun with the game, that's great. That said, if the game drops below 30 frames a second, that's an issue because frame rate is super important to me, which we can talk about. Oh no, we passed it. Never mind. I was gonna there's an anecdote I was gonna throw in, but we'll just wait on that.
Well, now I want to know.
Well, I was looking at the Cyberpunk stuff, and one of the Stadia patches is they increased the FOV slider to be the same on all platforms.
Okay.
I had a concussion a number of years ago, and post concussion, I never had motion sickness in video games ever. Post concussion, VR is very problematic for me. I get motion sickness really easy. but I've found recently games that have a really bad FOV slider, or either the FOV is too small. So when you're running through the game, I get motion sickness. So having the ability to increase my FOV to have more of the game engine, like a wider view of the game screen, helps out for some reason my motion sickness. So adding that to Cyberpunk was a nice thing for me, even though it wasn't making me motion sick before. With how things have been changing with my body, who knows if that's going to be something in the future. So having those functionalities is a really good thing.
Yeah, it reminds me of what's the game you and I were talking about before? Rainbow Six Siege. When that
Mhm.
came to Stadia, it was locked at 60 frames per second. Everything looked really great, but there was no ability for the player to change the FOV slider. And it's like there's always these trade-offs that you get with Stadia when you are when the game when the devs are bringing their game to a new platform. There's a bunch of trade-offs that will have to happen, and I think that's because the porting process is really difficult. I saw a very interesting tweet earlier this week where somebody had made this long document about if you're porting your game to a new platform, these are the kind of things that you should keep in mind. And like one of those things was like expect 8 to 9 months is how much time it's going to take you to make this port happen. And there's a lot of people out there that think you just take your game on your hard drive and you drop it in the new folder and you hit go and then everything just does it for you, and that's not the way it works. There's always trade-offs. And um with Stadia previously, games were requiring 3 full certifications for each game. And that meant if you are doing certifications, I think they said it was like 5 days of time that was spent on the certification process, and that's for
Wow.
one game. Um, and then they also had these things. This is coming from a video, a video from just excuse me. This is a video from oh my god, I can't. I'm blanking. John Scars,
That's
and
fair.
he was doing a live stream of some stream that I didn't know that Google was doing, where they were talking about like bringing games to their platform, and they said that it was 3 full certs for every game, 10 waivers. So people would like say, "Hey, can you please certify the game anyway? Here's a waiver that we're asking, and this is the reason why." And 10 post certification waivers. And when they did that, like that was a huge ask for developers. It was really slowing down the process of bringing games
Yeah.
from other platforms to Stadia. And then a few months ago, they made a big update. And that the big update was basically the Stadia porting toolkit and the ways that they were changing the certification process in order to streamline things by using AI to figure things out. And they went from 3 full certifications, which that's like 15 days of work. That's a
Wow.
lot. Down to 1.67 is the average. 10
That's great.
waivers down to 3.8 waivers. 10 post certification waivers down to less than 2 waivers for each game that they're porting. And I thought that was really, really interesting because at the beginning, games coming to Stadia was very, very slow. And then last year it sped up quite a bit. We got I think it was over 100 games last year. We're slated to have over 100 games this year. And I think that the things that Google are doing, and I've been shouting from the rooftops that I want Google to do more, but a lot of the things that they're doing is they're doing things to make it easier for devs. And they could tell us all day about that, but I'm not going to care because I don't know what the hell they're talking about. But they're making it easier for devs to bring their games, and I think that that's a really important thing.
Yeah, 100%. That's always a complaint you hear online from developers. Like if they're releasing something on Apple, it's like my damn app's been stuck in waiting for approval for 2 weeks. What's happening? And then they get back a small little note back from Apple saying we can't we can't approve this version of your app because of this. But that delta from when they submitted it to when they get the response back means that it's going to take double that to get the updated version out to their end users. So slowing down the certification process, or sorry, speeding up the certifications process from 10 days to a couple is huge, especially when games have to be certified in multiple regions. They have to have multiple passes on certification. So for Stadia to get that down means that both developers are becoming way more familiar with the tools and the API and the kind of the subset of stuff that they have to add to their game to make it Stadia compatible, to use all the new APIs that the Stadia platform would have. That means that developers are learning, but also Stadia is getting better at feedback and having their tools do the needed testing before the game binary's even been submitted, which is huge.
Yeah, absolutely. So William R. said that they need to do what NVIDIA is doing with GeForce Now, which is no work for devs. The issue is that GeForce Now is running games that are on Windows, and Stadia is Linux based, so that's not necessarily going to work. And Ninja Guy in chat says the Falconeer said that they made the port in just a few days. It's very fast now. And while that's true, you also have to keep in mind that the Falconeer has a native Linux version already. So like that could have also made things a lot easier for them. A lot of developers are making games on Xbox, PlayStation, and Windows, and then they're porting to Stadia, which is Linux. And there's, extra steps that you have to consider that you didn't have to consider when making it for other platforms.
Yeah, and you got to understand the Falconeer as well. It's a one game or one dev game studio, so he does all the stuff himself. So he recently ported a native Linux version of the app just to get ready for the Steam Deck. So it was a Windows binary up until just a little while ago.
Okay, I misunderstood.
So he has the ability to do that because he did the graphics, the sound, the game, the whatever. He did all that himself. So porting that stuff over is good. The whole Linux thing is kind of a misnomer when you think of if your game's already running on PlayStation, it's running on a Linux kernel. So maybe a lot of the learning that you did to get your game running properly there, you can take some of that knowledge and move it over to another platform. So Stadia getting their porting tools up to snuff, and for me as a developer, getting more feedback from a debugger, or when you try to compile saying there's issues here's what the issue is, or pre-compiled checks to make sure that you have everything linked properly. Increasing all of that helps development time like a lot. And I don't do game development, but just doing normal code that you want to run on a platform, having better feedback from your debugger or your compiler can help smooth a lot of this stuff out. So if their porting toolkit is giving more info out when they try to do something, that can speed things up. If there's, hey, we noticed that you might have an issue with this timer. This timer is set to look at the frames per second. It runs at 600 frames on our server. It runs at 60 on a PC. This might cause issues. You might want to look at ways to change that, because we've known back in the early days of Stadia, some games were running poorly because if Falconeer was one of those games, because it's running at 600 frames a second on Stadia, it's outputting at 60 frames a second. If you have a timer set to the frames per second, well, it's going to run 10 times as fast or potentially break depending on what type of data storage you're using for that timer. If you're using an int, it's going to obviously run over pretty quick before you can update a frame. Stuff like that. It's getting better tools is going to make better porting process, is going to make better developing process. And this is a huge thing for Nintendo. For Stadia, for Google, because both Nintendo in previous platforms and the PlayStation 3, for example, had really bad SDKs from the platform holder. They had to rely on a lot more middleware that did a lot of the heavy lifting, which slowed down game ports and game development. And then both Sony and Nintendo came out with better dev tools, and all of those developer complaints went away. So let's hope that the same thing happens here on Stadia as well.
Yeah, and 90% of that video that I was talking about the tools that are available to devs, and they were like, this is all like really, really great stuff. And I was like, it looks cool. I don't know anything about it, but it definitely seemed like it was impressive. Let's move on to stuff that is something that we would actually interact with a little bit more, and that's Stadia experiments. Google
Mm.
posted this earlier this week. Well, actually, this was back on the 9th, so a while ago, but we didn't do an episode last week. So they had this post about Stadia experiments and why they're useful, and they said some interesting stuff here. They said when building a product like Stadia, there's a delicate balance between wanting to deliver a new feature to our community as fast and early as possible, and ensuring that everything we ship meets our high quality standards. Furthermore, gathering and analyzing data is a critical part of our development process. They're excuse me, helping us to ID and address bugs across a large, fragmented ecosystem of end user environments. This feature validation phase is often the most time consuming part of the product development process. After launching Stadia, there were many new features on our product roadmap that we delivered in a short period of time. Validating performance of these features across all combinations of network environments, phone modules, audio, video setups, controllers, and more would have been impossible for our team to do directly without in the desired time frame. This is where Stadia Experiments was born. So basically, you can go into your app. You can scroll down. There's going to be a button that you can hit called Experiments, and you can say, turn that on. And we've seen this before. Well, other people have seen it before. I haven't been able to see it before because I'm on iOS, and I don't think that I've seen this um, on anything that's not Android. Maybe I'm wrong about this, but I went looking for this. I did not see the experiments button. Of course, Google always does this thing where they show it to some people and they do A/B testing and that kind of thing. But I didn't see the experiments button. But the experiments button to play on this device was a thing that we've seen people talk about before. And Google
Mm.
then says this allows them to get these features into people's hands fast, and get feedback. This is a lot like early access, with like we were talking about with Larian Studios.
Yeah.
It makes me feel like they should have just called Stadia early access, and they would have gotten off the hook for all the bad press that they got. But what are your thoughts on the Stadia experiments thing that they've been
Yeah.
talking about here?
Yeah, this is good. And putting it in a blog post like this to say why it's important is nice because there are a billion and one different combinations of phone, TV, computer, screens, resolution, network environments, OSs. So it's probably
It's
a billion combinations.
It's a problem that no other platform other than cloud
100%.
platforms would have.
Exactly. So early on when Stadia was new, they added a Stadia experiment that allowed me to get Stadia playable on my Android tablet, my Amazon Fire 10 tablet or whatever. I bought it just to play Stadia. Stadia wasn't running on it. Then I had to go in and enable the experiments, and next thing you know, I can play Stadia on it fully. So it's been around for a while, and I really love that they do that. I was trying to log into my phone app as well, and it's not on. It is on iOS rather, but the only experiment that I have is filter search in my version of the iOS
See, I
app.
don't have it.
Are you running the app or the web app version? Yeah,
Oh,
it has to be
shoot.
it has to be the actual physical app
Oh
version.
God, I haven't launched that thing in forever. Like
I
I
had to
don't use the
reinstall it.
app for anything.
I had to reinstall it myself because it had uninstalled on my phone because I don't use it very often unless I'm setting up a new user on a new Chromecast in my house. I don't really use it. I use the other one.
Yeah, I just been like, once I got it set up, I didn't have any reason to ever use it again because I make all the purchases from the web browser.
Yeah, I knew there was an experiment, but I couldn't remember what it was because I had looked at that recently, and I had to wait for my app to install before I could pull it up. So yeah, it's really really great that they're doing this. It allows Google to do smaller releases to select users. If you're an Xbox user, you could go into kind of like the different circles that they have to get early updates for different things. So if you've done it for a while, they put you in the like really experimental stuff. But if it's your first time, it's kind of experimental. They kind of give you they give you kind of like stats and XP the more stuff that you test out, and then you can get access to even earlier versions of the Xbox OS. Stuff like this on Google is great. But man, it just shows one of the major problems with Stadia compared to a console is your OS is running on the device that is displaying the videos. So like I don't know how much further they can take the Google OS, because it's all running in like JavaScript on the client device as the stream is happening. And we've talked about it in the past, like having the full UI being streamed at 4K from Google to your desktop would be so much better, and then it would be so much more responsive. But Google does things the Google way, and they've always done things the Google way, and this is definitely the Google way. And yeah, I don't know. Talking about experiments is important. It's going to get more people involved with it, which will maybe get through a lot of issues earlier than they normally would be if it was like a general rollout. But it underscores the fact that we don't have this issue on any other platform, like you said, Bill. Like we never have to worry. Like the combination of controllers and devices for a PlayStation update, because the OS runs natively on the hardware, and it's the same regardless whether it's hooked up to a 1080p screen or an 8K screen. So you don't really have to worry about that stuff as like a Sony developer, where you do have to worry about that as a Google developer.
Yeah, that's absolutely true. And again, I mean, the slowness of how Stadia ran on the original Chromecasts Ultras that came with it.
Mhm.
God, that was terrible. And I 100% still stand by that. That should not have been a thing. Like they should have been running it in the server and then just streaming it to us.
Yeah.
Just like you said, all that has kind of gone away now that you have it on all the other things, like it's on Android TV, or if it's on your
Yeah.
Google TV with Chromecast built in and stuff like that. All that stuff kind of falls away, but we still have that same issue where the UI is different depending on where you're looking, and you don't know where to look. Like just now, I was trying to find that experiments feature, but I was in the web app, not the real app, and it wasn't there. Like, put it in the same place. Otherwise, because I just assumed that I didn't have it because
Mhm.
I don't have any need to launch that stuff. Um, but they can also use the experiments feature to get people to try things out that
Yeah.
otherwise and lower their expectations, because a lot of people, they hear, okay, well, Stadia games are running at 4K 60 or whatever because they did the ridiculous ad at the very beginning, and then they want to try it on mobile data, and it doesn't really work all that well because maybe they're in a crappy area. But if you say, hey, that's an experiment, to try it on mobile data, well, now the end user is going to be like, oh well, I mean, it's still experimental, I guess I'll give them the benefit of the doubt. And
Mhm.
that kind of changes how people react to what they're experiencing, and it's just something
Yep.
something to keep in mind.
Definitely.
All right, let's move on to Latin America. We've talked about this in the past. There's always been an issue, like I think we talked about it last episode, where like there's like countries like Brazil. There's been rumors that Stadia was coming to Brazil for a really long time, and it was a really big deal because like in those countries, because of certain regulations and stuff, it's really hard to get modern gaming hardware. And if you could solve that problem by just streaming the games to them, then that's going to completely change things, which is a really big deal. And Google has this on their website, games.withgoogle.com, which every time they do a website like that, eventually it just goes to at google.com. I don't know why they do that. Just make it google.com/games. Like, I don't understand why you're doing that, but they said cloud gaming can solve software issues and support subscriptions. Cloud gaming is an opportunity to democratize hardware usage in Latin America, a Latin American region where regulation has made ownership difficult. From 2020 to 2021, the number of players paying to use cloud gaming services will grow sixfold, to
Mhm.
1.2 million. All right. So, like, first off, I've said this before, and like we've said it before on the show. the number I'm covering up your face. I'm sorry. The number of people who are going to use cloud gaming is just going to keep going up over time. And I don't think that Google is ever going to shutter Stadia.
No.
I think that they're in this for the long haul for no other reason than that's a lot of people who they can get to pay them for stuff eventually.
Yeah.
And they're like they're in it for the long haul. They're playing the long game. They're playing four-dimensional chess. It's hard for us to see what they're doing, and I'm very disappointed in how they're doing things right now. But
Mhm.
I'm betting that in the future, it's not like all of these issues that we've seen and complaints that we've had are going to fall away because so many more people are going to be able to access video games that otherwise wouldn't be able to. And
100%.
and I think that that's really important. I think that it's awesome.
Yeah, and I saw some community posts recently, not on like the Stadia community blog or anything, but just in the general community, and people are laughing at how slow the rollout has been. And it's like, well, we're in a chip shortage world right now.
Yeah.
We don't know how much of this expansion to Brazil and Latin America and Australia and all the other rumors that have come up based on trademark filings. We don't know how that was planned for the rollout, how the rollout was planned initially. Maybe this should have been done at the end of 2020 or the end of 2021, or now maybe the end of 2022. But this chip shortage has affected everybody. And these server blades that Google's putting in, they have chips, they have CPUs and GPUs and RAM and all this stuff that is in short supply or extremely hard to get. So maybe this expansion would have happened already if we weren't in the chip shortage, combined with COVID, combined with all the other weird issues that no tech company has really ever run into before, and they're all happening at the same time.
They absolutely launched at the worst possible time. For those of you
Yep.
that don't remember, it came out in November 2019, and 6 months later,
The
the
world shut
world was
down.
shut down. So it's definitely the worst. Like, listen, I got dish pan hands because I've been washing my dishes by hand for months while we wait for a dishwasher because our dishwasher broke. The guy took forever to come and fix it. He ordered parts. We waited forever for the parts to get here. The parts finally get here. He goes to install them and he's like, this isn't going to fix it after all. So we said, screw it. We're just going to buy a new dishwasher. We bought a new
Right.
dishwasher over a month ago. And we're
Yep.
still waiting for that. And why? Because of the chip shortage. My buddy just had leased a new car and he was driving down the road on his way to work. He hit a deer. His car got messed up bad. Finding a new car is impossible for him. So he has to
Yep.
get the one that he has fixed because it's really because cars have computer chips.
Yeah.
And for Google to like, everybody's always like, just put it in more countries. They have to build the servers, and getting
Yeah.
the chips is almost impossible.
Yeah.
You look at the PlayStation 5 and the Xbox Series X. Yes, they sold like gangbusters, but they had a lot of those things before.
Mm.
And Nintendo, Mr. Furukawa, the CEO of Nintendo, said, "I'm afraid that we're going to run out of Nintendo Switches to sell." You have Valve trying to launch the Steam Deck, and the Steam Deck got delayed by a few months for the first set of systems that are going to ship
Mhm.
out because the chip shortage is a real thing, and just putting it in more countries is not as easy as flipping a light switch.
Yeah, exactly. Like that's the thing that a lot of people don't understand is how this chip shortage is affecting everything. As you said, dishwashers. Your friend can't buy a car. Well, yeah, because you get the shots of like Ford factories, and they have 5,000 cars parked outside that don't have the CPU that the car needs to run. So they're just sitting there waiting for chips to come in. It's affecting every part of the industry, and I would think that we might have Gen 2 blades by now if maybe there wasn't a chip shortage, at least in experimental for developers to check out. We know that they've already had access in the past for a series of months and been able to play around with newer tech. maybe that stuff would have been happening at a higher frequency if we didn't run into this issue. So yeah, hopefully Google can get this expansion rolling out, because Google expanding to other countries is good for Stadia as a service, but also the Google white label service that they want to run.
Hmm.
They want to be able to have games playable worldwide, not just in Stadia supported countries. So hopefully this will all sort out over the next 6 to 12 months, because it's getting tough to buy anything these days that has any sort of computer inside of it.
Yeah. All right, let's move on. Dirt 5 got crossplay, which I don't play Dirt. Like I loaded it up and I played it a little bit, and it's a decent game. But it's not for me. But people who love Dirt 5, they should be really, really happy about this, because
Yeah.
that means that if you're playing on Stadia, now you have a whole bunch of people to play with. Now I did load it up afterwards, like after the crossplay was, well, actually, like this tweet came out before it was announced anywhere, and so then when I loaded it up, sure enough, it showed crossplay, and I turned on crossplay. I hit search for a match. I immediately found a match. I started playing. Um, I have a question for people who like Dirt 5, and hopefully people in chat, or they'll leave a comment down below. Two things. Number one, um, everybody was just called. I wasn't sure if I was racing against bots or not, because everybody's name was just like Dirt Racer or something. I can't remember what it was, but it was generic name, right? But man, I don't know what this was. When I play Dirt, everybody's name is blurry. Like when you're racing, the names that are above the cars are all really, really blurry. Almost like it was a design decision, and I don't understand the design decision. So I'm just asking, so maybe somebody in chat can say, "Oh, it's not you, Bill. It's me. It's everybody." Or maybe they're like, "You need to get your eyes checked." I don't know. It was weird. So, have you played Dirt 5?
A little bit, a little bit. I'm not a huge fan of those types of racing games. I love really arcadey games, like Burnout. That's my jam. Horizon Forza Horizon. What's the new one that just came out? Six,
5.
whichever. Five, the one that just came out.
Love that
That
game.
is as realistic of a driver as I can as I can deal with, because it's realistic if you want it to be, but you can also just like hold down the accelerator and just drive and bounce off things if you want to.
Mhm.
But yeah, dirt's not my jam, but it's really great to see a crossplay. That is huge. Every game on Stadia needs crossplay. So to get these older games patched is just going to make everybody's life that much better if your main platform that you want to play on is Stadia.
Who is this quote from, Lloyd, that you just typed in there? This dirt looks more like a sandbox.
Who is it? Someone in the chat was Ninja Guy X, but Dirt 5's Dirt is not looking as good as PlayStation 5.
Oh,
Yeah,
I got you. I will say that when you're driving, when you're coming up on like a mud puddle or whatever in Dirt 5, I think it looks really nice on Stadia. I haven't played it on the other platforms, but it definitely looks nice. Although I would say that the graphics are a little soft, so it's definitely running at a lower resolution and then upscaling to 4K. But that's not the end of the world. It's, you know, the world is going by fast enough that it shouldn't really matter.
Right.
Let's talk about a game that was supposed to come to Stadia. I'd never heard of it, and now
Mm.
it's not coming to Stadia. Had you heard anything about this game called Smash Ball?
Other than just like kind of the original post about it, that Smash Ball was coming, people got really excited for it. But then we found out that it's not coming for whatever reason. So that happens. Although if you go to their website, Smash Ball game, it still has the Stadia logo right on it. So I don't know what that's all about, but apparently it is not coming to Stadia right now.
Oh, okay. Oh yeah, yep. The Stadia logo is still down there. Oh, it's also coming to the App Store and Google Play. I don't know anything about this game. I just saw that it was no longer coming to Stadia. And of course, people are worried about that. But guess what? No need to worry, because there's other games that are coming to Stadia still. Games like Sky Climbers. They posted this tweet. They said, "It's Stadia Sunday. We want to reassure our community that our release plans haven't changed. We will be announcing our official alpha release date in the coming weeks." Now, I'm super skeptical when it comes to Sky Climbers. I've never been somebody who trusts in what's it called?
Kickstarter.
crowdfunding stuff. Like, I just don't trust that that's gonna ever work out the right way. And I know that it has. Like, my buddy got the Trogdor, the Burninator, the board game, and it's awesome
Yeah,
and
it is.
fantastic and super high quality. And it never would have happened without Kickstarter or whatever crowdfunding campaign it was. But I know that you're a little more sweet on Sky Climbers than I am, Lloyd. So are you still looking forward to this one?
I like the idea. It's like Pokemon cross with Fortnite. I kind of love the idea for the game. More so this tweet that they came out with. This came out February 6th. So this was around the time when that Business Insider article came out.
Yeah.
So a lot of Stadia devs came out and actually posted pro Stadia tweets, which was really nice to see, because you hear the horror stories that, oh, every dev that's worked on Stadia hates it, which I don't think is anywhere near accurate. Maybe a few didn't like the platform. But to have a game like Sky Climbers that only exists mainly because of Stadia. It was the Stadia users that came and flooded their Kickstarter and got them to the level that they really wanted. They might have had a fine Kickstarter without Stadia, but it was that hype from the Stadia community that really, I don't know, accelerated how successful their Kickstarter was. For them to come out and reassure people is a good thing in my book, because there's a lot of Stadia people that bought in, that really wanted to play this game. So the fact that it will be coming at some point for their alpha release and then the beta release and then of the full release, that is a really good thing as a Stadia gamer.
Yeah, and you said that you said some quote about, devs were unhappy with Stadia. I don't think I've ever seen a dev. I mean,
Yeah,
maybe I just don't remember. I don't think I've ever seen a dev say anything bad about Stadia. In fact, I've only seen
it's
good things. In fact, over at Stadia's stadia.dev website, they have some
Mhm.
quotes from devs. Like this one we had already seen before. Akupara Games. They made Grime and Darkside Detective, and they said these games are polar opposites, and Stadia Pro seems to be a benefit a wide variety of titles, regardless of style or replayability. They also said Stadia Pro has consistently exceeded our expectations on both a payout and player engagement. We have an active, passionate community of players for our titles. And those are not games that are exclusively on Stadia. Those are games you can play in other places as well. And Akapura Games is saying, we're getting our money's worth for making our games and putting them on Stadia. We're getting our money's worth. And then Outright Games, that's an older quote before. The Outright Games is a newer quote. They said, from the outset, Stadia Pro felt like a natural fit for Outright Games and kids video games in general. The accessibility of the platform, coupled with Stadia's increased commitment to distributing quality, age-appropriate video games to families, has allowed our titles to thrive in their ecosystem. We've seen fantastic amount of engagement with our games on Stadia already, with revenue that went above our expectations. As we expand our portfolio, we will continue to bring more opportunities to play great kid games in the cloud. Now, I don't care about any games from Outright Games. They are not games that are for Bill, and that does not bother me. I'm fine with them making their games, but why am I talking about this? Because I know that a lot of people are going to say, I don't care about that either. But this is two developers, two very
Yep.
different developers, by the way, that are saying we're getting more than we expected out of
Mhm.
bringing our games to Stadia. And I think that that's an important thing.
It's 100%. I 100% agree with you. Every developer that we've talked to directly, that is still making Stadia games, has had nothing but good things to say about the platform. We've seen former developers that have left the company that had worked on a Stadia game, and there's been some not so nice quotes from people. But you got to chalk up ex employees. A lot of those comments could be sour grapes. So you never know kind of what happened with the employment of that. We also saw some negative comments when SG&E shut down from the people that were unfortunately caught in the crossfire. Again, lost their job, probably not happy with the company. They're going to say bad things about Stadia. But all the developers that seem to be currently releasing stuff on the platform, it's all rosy. I don't see a lot of hate from either the development tools, the tool chain, the SDK, the platform. Now that we talked about the early at the start of the show with the certifications being a lot quicker as well. all the complaints that we've ever heard from developers that are actual developers still all seem to have gone away, which is a really good thing for a platform.
Absolutely. And I think that we will continue to see things improve over time. And it seems like the way that Google wants to handle it is to just keep improving things for devs and not talk to us all that much, which I still think is a problem. And
Yeah.
you're frozen.
Am I? Oh, I am. Weird. Let me
How
let me
long he's been like that, people. I fixed him. There he is.
Oh, you fixed me? Oh, it was a U side. I was going to turn my camera on and off, so I'm glad I didn't do that.
All right.
It was a
Well,
U thing.
I think that does it for today's episode of Stadiacast. Thanks for hanging out with us, everybody. Lloyd, you wanna tell everybody goodbye?
All right, everybody. Thanks for joining us for another Stadiacast. We'll see you here next week on Stadiacast. Have a good week, everybody.